The Trump administration has responded with financial punishment. They've threatened to pull federal grants from sanctuary jurisdictions, potentially costing New Mexico millions in funding for law enforcement, emergency management, and public safety programs. But Governor Lujan Grisham hasn't backed down. She's argued that immigration enforcement is a federal responsibility, not a state one, and that New Mexico won't use its limited resources to do the federal government's job. Here's where it gets even more complicated. While the state government resists, some local governments are cooperating. Otero County, in southern New Mexico along the border, has actively worked with federal immigration authorities. In late 2024, they allowed ICE to use county facilities for immigration enforcement operations. The county sheriff has publicly stated his support for stricter border security. This created a patchwork system where your rights and treatment depend entirely on which county you're in. Drive from Doña Ana County, a sanctuary jurisdiction, into Otero County, and the entire enforcement landscape changes. The numbers tell an interesting story. Despite all the military presence and enforcement activity, Border Patrol encounters in the El Paso sector, which includes much of New Mexico's border, have actually decreased compared to previous years. In fiscal year 2024, the El Paso sector recorded roughly 60,000 encounters, down from over 200,000 in fiscal year 2023. Some credit the increased enforcement. Others point to policy changes in Mexico and economic factors that influence migration patterns. The truth is probably a combination of everything. But here's what the statistics don't capture: the human impact. Immigrant advocacy groups in New Mexico report a climate of fear in communities with large immigrant populations. People afraid to drive to work, families keeping kids home from school, witnesses to crimes refusing to come forward because they're terrified of encountering any law enforcement that might ask about immigration status. The American Civil Liberties Union of New Mexico has filed multiple lawsuits challenging what they call unconstitutional stops and searches by Border Patrol agents operating far from the actual border. The economic implications are massive too. New Mexico's economy relies heavily on cross-border trade with Mexico. The state's southern border crossing at Santa Teresa is one of the busiest inland ports in the United States, handling billions of dollars in trade annually. Business leaders have warned that aggressive immigration enforcement and border militarization could disrupt supply chains and hurt economic growth. Agricultural operations, construction companies, and hospitality businesses across New Mexico depend on immigrant labor, both documented and undocumented. Stricter enforcement creates labor shortages that ripple through entire sectors of the economy. Then there's the environmental angle that nobody's talking about. That 109,000 acres turned into a military zone includes critical wildlife habitat. The area is home to endangered species, migratory birds, and fragile desert ecosystems. Conservation groups have raised alarms about military vehicles damaging sensitive landscapes, construction projects disrupting wildlife corridors, and increased human activity in previously remote areas. The National Defense Area designation exempts the military from certain environmental review processes that would normally apply to such a large-scale land use change. So where does this leave New Mexico? The state has become a testing ground for two fundamentally different visions of how America should handle immigration. On one side, you have maximum enforcement, military zones, mass prosecutions, deployment of thousands of troops, and threats to cut funding from any jurisdiction that doesn't cooperate. On the other side, you have resistance, sanctuary policies, state-funded legal defense for immigrants, lawsuits against federal enforcement, and a governor who's made protecting immigrant communities a central part of her political identity. Neither approach has solved the underlying issues. The National Defense Area has led to hundreds of prosecutions, but hasn't stopped people from crossing the border. Sanctuary policies have protected some immigrants from deportation, but have also drawn federal retaliation that could cost the state vital funding. And caught in the middle are ordinary people, immigrants seeking better lives, border communities dealing with the daily reality of enforcement, ranchers whose land borders the military zone, and New Mexico residents trying to understand what's happening in their own state. The legal battles are far from over. Multiple lawsuits are working their way through federal courts, challenging everything from the constitutionality of the national defense area to the legality of withholding federal funds from sanctuary jurisdictions. Whatever the courts decide will set precedents that extend far beyond New Mexico. Other border states are watching closely. If the military zone strategy is upheld, expect to see similar designations in Texas, Arizona, and California. If sanctuary policies survive federal challenges, more states and cities will likely adopt them. What makes New Mexico unique is the sheer scale of contradiction. You can literally stand in one spot where the state government says you're protected, and the federal government says you're in a military base subject to detention. That's not hyperbole. That's the actual legal reality for thousands of square miles of American territory. It raises profound questions about federalism, state sovereignty, and what happens when different levels of government pursue completely incompatible policies in the same geographic space. This isn't just about immigration policy. It's about power. Who has the authority to decide how American land is used? Can the federal government unilaterally turn public land into military installations? Can states refuse to enforce federal law? Can the federal government force them to comply by cutting funding? These questions go to the heart of how our government works, and New Mexico has become the battlefield where they're being fought. As we begin 2026, the situation in New Mexico shows no signs of resolving. The Trump administration has signaled it plans to expand border enforcement even further. Governor Lujan Grisham has vowed to fight every step of the way. The military zone remains in place. Sanctuary counties aren't backing down. And somewhere in the middle, the actual issue of immigration, of human beings seeking safety and opportunity, gets lost in the political warfare. New Mexico didn't ask to become the epicenter of America's immigration debate, but that's exactly what it's become. And what happens here will shape immigration policy across the entire country for years to come. Federal troops can now arrest you on American soil without a warrant. Not for a crime, just for being in the wrong place. In that place, a 400 square mile military zone carved out of New Mexico's border that didn't exist a year ago. While 23 of the state's 33 counties have been labeled sanctuary jurisdictions by the federal government, the U.S. Army has literally taken ownership of public land along the southern border. Welcome to New Mexico in 2025, where the fight over illegal immigration has created one of the strangest contradictions in America. This is the story of how one state became ground zero for two completely opposite approaches to immigration enforcement. Let's start with what sounds like science fiction but is absolutely real. In April 2025, the Trump administration transferred over 109,000 acres of federal land in New Mexico to the U.S. Army. This wasn't a lease. This wasn't temporary use. The Department of Defense now owns this land for the next 3 years. They're calling it the National Defense Area. And here's where it gets wild. This isn't just a 60-foot strip along the border, like officials originally claimed. According to official documents, it's 400 square miles of land that used to belong to the American people. Land where you could hike, hunt, or pass through freely. Now, it's a military base. Under federal law, military personnel can now detain anyone found in this zone. Not arrest, technically, but detain, search, and hold you until Border Patrol arrives. The charge? Unauthorized entry into a military installation. The penalty? Up to 1 year in federal prison. By early August 2025, over 200 people had been charged with this brand new crime. Think about that. A crime that didn't exist before April is now being prosecuted hundreds of times. And these aren't all people crossing the border. The Continental Divide Trail, one of America's premier long-distance hiking routes, runs right through this zone. Hunters looking for rare Mearns quail have found themselves in what is now technically a military base. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth made the strategy crystal clear during a visit to the zone. He said anyone entering this area is now entering a military base, a federally protected area, and they will be interdicted by U.S. military forces. About 6,600 soldiers and Marines are currently deployed along the southwest border. But here's the twist. Despite having the authority to physically detain people, troops haven't actually made arrests themselves. They detect, they alert Border Patrol, and civilian agents make the actual apprehension. It's a partnership that raises serious questions about where military authority ends and civilian law enforcement begins. The confusion has been real and immediate. In late May, the U.S. Attorney's Office had to dismiss charges against at least 3 people because prosecutors thought they were in the national defense area, but they weren't. Even the government couldn't figure out the boundaries of its own military zone. Local officials have been scrambling for clarity. Luna County Sheriff Kelly Ganaway said his office wasn't consulted before the designation and had to figure out the boundaries on their own. Hidalgo County officials reported that hunters kept wandering into the zone, having no idea they were committing a federal offense. Now, let's flip the script entirely, because while the federal government is militarizing the border, New Mexico's state government is doing the exact opposite. Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, a Democrat, has positioned New Mexico as one of the most immigration-friendly states in the nation. Under her leadership, New Mexico has provided state-funded lawyers for immigrants facing deportation. The state attorney general has sued the Trump administration multiple times over immigration enforcement policies. And perhaps most significantly, New Mexico declared itself a sanctuary state through executive action, limiting how state resources can be used to help federal immigration enforcement. This isn't just political theater. It has real consequences. In January 2025, the Trump administration officially designated 23 of New Mexico's 33 counties as sanctuary jurisdictions. What does that mean? These counties refuse to honor immigration detainers, which are requests from Immigration and Customs Enforcement to hold someone in local jail beyond their release date so ICE can pick them up for deportation. The federal government views this as obstruction. These counties view it as protecting constitutional rights and community trust.